Yes, sir, ladies and gents. Once again, we are back and live. I am so happy to be back after a quick little hiatus. So happy to be back with you guys. Um, Old King Tiberius will be in just a moment, but we just wanted to come on. We're gonna hit y'all real quick today. Obviously, this is a huge day for basketball fans like myself. NBA Finals start tonight. As a matter of fact, they should be tipping off in the next couple minutes here. um, Denver Nuggets and Miami Heat. So we're gonna talk a little bit about both Eastern and Western Conference Finals, and then we're gonna kind of give a little bit of a finals preview. And then also today, we're gonna talk a little bit about the DeAndre Hopkins situation. Obviously, he was just released by the Arizona Cardinals, so we're gonna kind of talk a little bit about what may be the best fits for him. And then also we might kind of visit this Jimmy Garoppolo situation for those who aren't cognizant of what's going on there. He's obviously he signed with the I want to call them Oakland so bad with the Las Vegas Raiders this offseason. However, he has yet to pass his physical, and so there's a possibility that the deal could be voided pending, future physical. So, real quick show today, about an hour, if that. We're gonna hit a few topics and we're gonna get out the way. So, yeah, as always, like I said, old King Tiberius will be in a minute, and we're gonna get into this intro. And just like that, we are back. Um, like I said, we're gonna really get down to the nitty gritty as far as these NBA finals go. Once again, Miami Heat and Denver Nuggets. I think coming into this season, I don't think too many people had this matchup picked coming into the season. You got a team in the Denver Nuggets who were for the vast majority of the season, I'd say since about December, they had been the number one seed in the Western Conference, and they have held on to that seed pretty much the majority of the season, straight all the way through to the playoffs. The Miami Heat, on the other hand, what a story they have become this season. Almost you could say Cinderella, so to speak. Um, they were in the play-in. They lost their first play-in game to the Atlanta Hawks, and they were probably about 3 minutes away from being out of the playoffs altogether because they were losing to my Chicago Bulls. FYI, man, I was feeling real, I guess a little homesick. I was feeling real Shot Town today, so got on Little Blue, got on my Bears hat, love what they've been doing this offseason. So yeah, just showing some support. But anyway, yeah, when you just look back just a month and a half ago, and you see where the Miami Heat were, like I said, they were about 3 minutes away from not even being in the playoffs. And to see them, in those last 3 minutes of that play-in game against the Chicago Bulls to go on a run, and then they come out, they get the 8th seed, they come out against the number 1 seed Milwaukee Bucks, and they beat them in pretty much a gentleman's sweep. They beat them in 5, if I'm not mistaken. Obviously, Giannis did miss like 2 of those games, but yet and still, no one would have guessed or assumed or predicted that the Miami Heat would have beat that team, even without Giannis. Nobody would have predicted that based on how inconsistent they had been during the regular season and how they struggled to even get into the playoffs. Struggled getting out of the play-in into the playoffs, but they get past Milwaukee in the first round as an 8 seed, beating the 1 seed. They played the New York Knicks in the second round, which I think was a fairly favorable matchup for them. It was kind of an ode back to 90s basketball, like for us basketball heads. it was kind of an ode back to some of the old Miami Heat and New York Knicks series that we're used to seeing, back in the day. And then, oh, what's up? What's going on, bro? Can you hear me?
I can. What's going on?
I can't call it. I was just talking about the Miami Heat a little bit. Obviously they beat the Knicks in the second round in what was kind of a throwback series, but in what I think was a really favorable matchup for them. And then in the Eastern Conference Finals, they go up 3-0 on what was a lot of people favorite to come out of the Eastern Conference in the Boston Celtics. Obviously, Boston showing a lot of heart, a lot of moxie. They come all the way back, force a game 7 before Miami makes pretty easy work of them in game 7 on the road in Boston. So here we are in another interesting matchup. You got the 1 seed in the Western Conference against the 8 seed in the Eastern Conference. Some people might view this kind of as a David versus Goliath matchup, but I think this is far from that. This Miami team is tough. They're gritty.
They're confident.
And they're confident.
They believe in themselves.
They do, man. And I really think this is going to be a tough and entertaining series.
And you know what's funny? I think everybody would agree that Denver's the better team. A more talented team.
Mm-hmm.
But by Jesus Christ, Jimmy Butler is making me a believer. It's something about this unshakable confidence that he has, and that not just him, that entire team has. And Eric Spoelstra, who I think, obviously doesn't get enough credit, but he's, you don't hear much from Eric Spoelstra. He kind of just does his job, comes in, does what he's supposed to do, but they're not scared at all. They're not afraid of anybody, and they've consistently showed that not only throughout the season but throughout the playoffs. But I ain't gonna lie, like there's a part of me that feels like they could have a chance to make this more competitive than maybe what we thought it would be. My original prediction was that it would be a gentleman's sweep, but now I'm pretty confident that it's gonna go 6 games. That you're gonna see Miami steal 1 or 2.
Yeah, I'm thinking 6 games as well. And then even just looking at this Miami team, right? Once again, like I said, very inconsistent during the regular season, right? To even be in the play-in this season after they were the number 1 seed last year. Mm-hmm. But here they are this season in the play-in tournament. Barely make it out of the play-in tournament, to be honest. This is a team, they lost their second leading scorer in Tyler Hero, lost him in the first round of the playoffs. This team has 7 undrafted players on their playoff roster. 7. And some of these guys, first of all, in their main rotation, right? Caleb Martin, Max Strus, Gabe Vincent,
Caleb Martin,
who's found himself, back in the lineup. All of those guys are undrafted. All of those guys play prime time minutes for this team. Caleb Martin, and I think you were going to allude to,
has been like his number 2 option.
You could argue, and they gave the I think it's, what is it called, the Bob Cousy Award or whatever, the Eastern Conference Finals Most Valuable Player. They gave it to Jimmy Butler.
Or to Jimmy Butler,
but you could very well argue that Caleb Martin deserved that award. Once again, this is a kid who was undrafted, started in the G League. I think he played with the Charlotte Hornets like a year with his brother, because he has a brother in the league as well. He played there for like a year or so, got released. Crazy enough, now mind you, this is the second year in a row that Miami and Boston have went to a game 7 in the playoffs. This very same time last year, he was on the Miami Heat. He was a DNP in game 7 last year. Like he was in no way, shape, or form any part of their rotation. Kid keeps grinding, keeps working. Now things come full circle, and he's a huge player in what they do. I think he was their second leading scorer in that Eastern Conference final series. And then, like I said, Max Strus, Gabe Vincent, Duncan Robinson, all of these guys play substantial minutes for this Miami Heat team. None of them were drafted. This is a team. Jimmy Butler and guys, fact check me on this. Jimmy Butler didn't make the All-Star game this year.
I think he did.
Did he? I don't think he did. I have to double check that.
Let me check. I think that'd be he might not
either
have.
way. But either way, and then he ends up, and people could argue this. I think he ended up making the All NBA second or third team. People can argue because it's
he didn't make
award.
Well, it said 2022, so it would be last
year.
It'll be
so it'll be the 2023 All-Star game.
Okay, yeah, he didn't make it. It said
So Jimmy didn't even make the All-Star game. He ends up making, I believe, the second team, either the All-NBA second or All-NBA third team this year. And you could argue that because it's a regular season award, you can argue that he didn't even deserve that. And then seeing how the team struggled this year. But we all know they call him Playoff Jimmy for a reason. Gets into the playoffs. And
Jordan.
Right? Himmy buckets, you know what I'm saying? Like, the man, he's had some, even in this very playoffs, like, he's had some all-time play. He had, 55 in a game against Milwaukee in the first
Milwaukee,
round?
Yeah, I think was it game 2? Was it game 2? Game 2, game 3? Yeah.
He's had some all-time playoff performances already in this very playoff run alone. So, I mean, they're going to be tough. They're a scrappy team. And one thing about them is that their core group of guys, they have guys on that team. And this is the only reason, you seen in the sports chat earlier, someone shared a tweet where an analyst was kind of saying, I think it was Jay Williams earlier. Jay Williams earlier today basically said that this was probably some to the fact that this was probably the best run that he's seen, a star, make as far as carrying his team. And obviously, people go crazy because they think back to some of the teams that LeBron has gotten to the finals, the 07 team, the 07 Cleveland team, the 2018 Cleveland team, and rightfully so. Not to take anything, away from him.
But this Eastern Conference?
I don't think that what Jay Williams said was so out of line, though. Because when you look at what Jimmy Butler has done, they have 7 undrafted players on their playoff roster, 4 that are really, truly in their rotation. He lost his second leading scorer in the first round of the playoffs. They were so inconsistent this year. They were legit 3 minutes from not even making the playoffs. And then to look at the teams he's beat.
That's what I'm about to say.
To beat a Milwaukee, who was also another, analyst favorite. To beat a Boston Celtics, who were just in the finals last year.
He went against 2. You could argue that he beat 2 top 3 teams in the NBA to make it to the finals.
You can. Exactly.
2 top 3 teams. That's crazy.
Exactly. So, I mean, this Miami Heat team, man, I mean, they're greedy. And I was saying all that to say that the only reason why I would still say I would still give some of Cleveland, some of LeBron's, in particular that 07 Cleveland team, the reason why I would say that might be a slightly more impressive run is because, although Miami's inconsistent, they have been inconsistent in the regular season, although, they have all these undrafted guys, they do still have some guys with finals experience and or championship pedigree. When you talk about Bam and Duncan Robinson and Jimmy Butler, they were a part of that bubble team that went to the finals. Okay, when you talk about a Kevin Love, a Kyle Lowry, these are 2 guys that have had won a championship. You know what I'm saying? And even although he's not part of the rotation at all, to even have a veteran on your bench like a Udonis Haslem, just to be that guy in the locker room there, I mean, I that's the only reason why I would probably give LeBron 07 Cleveland team a slight edge, but I don't think what Jay Williams said earlier, I don't think that's crazy to say at all.
So let me ask you this. Excuse me. You know, we all agree.
Isaiah, aka the third co-host. What's going on, brother?
Yeah, what's going on? Zay. So okay, we all agree that this can be viewed as a mismatch because of the talent that Denver has. So when looking at
that's a good comparison there, actually. When for those that don't know, Madison Bumgarner, pitcher, I don't know if he's still with the Giants, former pitcher for the Giants, and what he's did for them in a playoff run was absolutely sensational. But I ain't gonna get too far in it. That's a great comparison, though.
So I was gonna ask if, in your opinion, what is the most effective way? What does Miami have to do to be competitive against Denver?
Whew. Well,
what are some of the key things that they're going? Because you know, I feel like Tyler Herro, he might be coming back game 2. He didn't get clear for the night, but him being gone puts a lot more pressure on Bam Adebayo to do a little bit more on the offensive end, which you would think in this series is so crucial because you want to have him harass Jokic and kind of be on him and stress him out all game. So, but what are some of the things that you think they need to do to keep up with this team? Because the thing about Denver is, you know, I think we even watched it when they were playing the Lakers. Denver is so confident in what they can do. It's almost Golden State like. They're very confident in their ability to score points in bunches. So what do you think?
So, well, I'm gonna say thing 1, 2, and 3 is they gotta figure out something with Nikola Jokic. I mean, the man that's A, B, and C, right? I think that Jokic, you know what? I'm gonna say it. I think that this year and this playoff run, I think that he has stamped himself as the best player in the NBA. I really do. With that being said, I mean, he can just hurt you in so many ways. You know, if you need him to go get 35 and 40 points,
he can do that.
Hey, he can do that. Or otherwise, you know, he can still hurt you offensively because he can get 20, 22, 24 points, but still have 13, 14 assists and 11 or 12 rebounds, you know.
And somebody else is eating.
Which brings me to, you know, point number 2. Jamal Murray has really seemed to have found his footing. He's really seemed to have he's almost kind of gotten back to that bubble Jamal Murray. And I'm really happy for him considering all the injuries that he went through. I'm really happy for him. He seems to have gotten back to that. He seems to have gotten back to that bubble Jamal Murray, which brings me to my second point. Miami's going to have to figure out a way to truly guard that Murray Jokic pick and roll, because I think they're going to see a lot of that in this series. And then last but not least, if I'm not mistaken, I think the Denver Nuggets were the best rebounding team in the playoffs. And Miami is a fairly small team. You know, they really
play bigger. They play bigger than what they are, though.
They do. As a collective, they all scrap. They get in there and they try to gang rebound. But Bam is probably really their only true center, and he's not really
6'8",
a center.
6'9".
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? And then they'll bring in Kevin Love off the bench, spot him some minutes, but it's really the same thing with him, and the same with they'll spot I think that's Cody Zeller. They'll spot, you know, Zeller a few minutes here and there. So they're really gonna have to get in there and gang rebound. You know, they're really gonna have to keep the rebounding battle close because they are the smaller team, and just make these they're gonna have to make these some ugly games. Even right now, I'm looking at it right now. I mean, Aaron Gordon has gotten off to a great start already, which is what makes Denver so crazy. Aaron Gordon's got 10, 11 points in the first quarter already.
I think Aaron Gordon has probably played some of his best basketball these last this last month and a half. I was never high on Aaron Gordon, but I feel like once you let him slide back into being more,
a lot of people thought he should have been an All-Star this year.
Yeah, no, I mean, I feel like now that all the pieces are in place and he can just slide into just being a 3-and-D guy. I mean, obviously he just now started to develop more of a 3-ball. Mm-hmm. I feel like this is like you're seeing the best of Aaron Gordon.
Mm-hmm. I think that he's in the perfect situation where he's able to play off of such a talented big that can pass the ball. And I think that his skill set is so great for them. You know, he's about, like you said, about 6'8", 6'9", athletic. He has a really nice build. And then he's a guy that you don't have to worry. You can put him one-on-one on you know, another team's, you know, best big.
Center or
another
center.
Team's, or on another team's best wing, you know, because he's such a, not that he's just a world beater on defense, but he's a solid enough defender, and he's a very versatile defender.
So the defender, exactly.
That you can do a lot of things with him. And then, like I said,
and he is an athlete.
He is. And then they got Michael Porter Jr., who isn't, not that he's, you know, great defensively, but he is 6'10", you know.
Big body,
and one thing about Michael Porter Jr., and even their coach Mike Malone has mentioned this, in these playoffs, Michael Porter Jr. has really made more of a concerted effort to get in there and rebound. And that's really helping, and that's really part of the reason why they've been kind of the best rebounding team in the playoffs so far. So yeah, those are my 3 things for Miami. You know, figure out something, figure out how they're going to try to guard and slow down Jokic, figure out what they're going to do with that Jokic Murray pick and roll, and then they've got to gang rebound if they're going to, you know, win this series.
I swear to God, watching, once again, you talk about Jamal Murray and Jokic. It's so funny watching them because it's so backwards. You talk about Jokic Murray pick and roll. Usually it would be the guard.
Right.
you would say the Murray Jokic pick and roll, right? But it's literally flip-flop, but it's a crazy dynamic, and it works.
Right. And that just shows you the type of skill set and how special Nikola Jokic is, you know, that he can bring the ball up and they can have Jamal Murray come and set the screen, or he's bringing the ball up and they're running, you know, their little dribble handoffs or whatnot. And because and Jamal Murray is one of the better basketball players at operating off of the screen and roll.
Right.
You know, he's really crafty. You know, obviously he can shoot. And he's one of those guys, like, when Jamal Murray gets it going, like, he's one of those guys, like, stand by. You know, we've seen him put up 50-point games in the playoffs.
Yeah.
You know, like, he's one of those guys, when he gets it going, he can carry a team, you know.
And I think that's a scary part about Jamal Murray, is that his best basketball is still ahead of him. If he can stay healthy.
That. Exactly.
Yeah. He's still fairly young.
You can really kind of, you know what, Jokic has been in the league. Well, I think this is year 9 for him. Like, he came in
he came in 2000. He came in with Joel Embiid. He was the 2nd round pick that year, I think, right?
Yeah, 2014. 40. Yeah, he was the 41st pick, something like that. Yeah. So I mean, he still got a lot of good basketball left in him.
Hey, look, Jordan Lewis for the Dallas Cowboys said this.
Mm-hmm.
He said, he was tweeting, and he said, Jokic gonna be good for a long time. He said the only thing that can stop him is diabetes. Think about this. But think about this. His game is not predicated on athleticism at all. So what's to say that he can't do this for another 10 to 15 years?
And he's such a willing and talented, you know, passer.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's really what makes him special. You know, we've seen post players with great footwork. You know, we've seen some bigs that can, you know, that have some passing skills that can. We've probably seen bigs with better handle, but just the total and complete package of what he has to his game. And if you remember, I said this 3 or
4 years ago. You did. You've been talking about
already 3-4 years ago. I said that Nikola Jokic was the best passing big man in NBA history. And people looked at me like I was just insane for saying that. Only the Cowboys get brought up in a finals combo.
What? I mean,
Right?
look, Jordan Lewis said something that was pretty funny, man. So I had to bring it up. But
Right. But
but
yeah,
no,
man,
yeah.
Jokic's skill set is just like I said, I said it, 3-4 years ago, and now people are really just now kind of jumping on the bandwagon. Like Jokic is a guy who could realistically lead the league in points, rebounds, and assists. Like we haven't seen it. The way we've seen bigs that could pass. I mean, Tim Duncan was a very willing passer. I always think about Arvydas Sabonis, Demontis' father,
yeah.
Vlade Divac, Chris Webber. I mean, there's been some really good passing.
Pau
Bill Walton, Pau Gasol. There's been some really good passing big men in the league, but there are times when Jokic is literally bringing the ball up, initiating offense, and he averaged almost 10 assists a game this season. Like and I don't think we've seen that from a true big.
So okay, I'm gonna bring this up, and I'm sure whoever's watching, whether it's Isaiah, you feel free to chime in. Well, I think I've asked this question, and I want to know your opinion on it.
Mm-hmm.
Why do people hate him so much? Like, think about this: people hate Nikola Jokic so much that that's the reason why Joel Embiid won the MVP. It wasn't because he was the clear-cut MVP. It was because people hated Jokic so much that they said, we want Joel Embiid to be the MVP. And obviously we saw the result of that.
Right.
But if you were to give your opinion, why do people hate him so much? And I don't think it's everybody, but I'm going to go ahead and be transparent. I say I think it's a lot of people in the Black community that fucking hate him. Like they can't fucking stand Nikola Jokic. But what do you think?
So, okay, I'll talk about this year. Obviously Jokic had won, back-to-back MVPs. So if they were to give the MVP to Jokic this year, now we're talking about a 3-time consecutive MVP. Now you're putting him in really rare air. I'm trying to think who Larry Bird, and you're putting him in really rare air. And so for a lot of people, it's just the thought or the notion like, wow, do we really think that this guy is that great? And I think that hurt him. I think that Denver kind of ended the year a little shaky, whereas Joel Embiid himself, maybe the last 2 or 3 weeks of the season, he was on a tear to end the season. So I think that had something to do with it. And then, I root, unapologetically, hey, I root for my brothers. I do.
Yeah.
And so, I'm that guy. Like, I'm quick to point out, something that's unfair when it comes to our Black brothers and sisters.
Right.
So, in all fairness, I have to point out in the opposite direction as well. And I think that you may have to take color into consideration with that as well. I don't know if you remember this, it was a couple months ago, or it was like a little bit before the season was ending. And Kendrick Perkins has said something to the fact of like, the only reason, Steve Nash, I think he said Nash, Dirk, and Jokic. Basically, he was alluding that, he didn't say it verbatim, but he was like, these guys have won,
Who was it? Him and Nick Wright kind of got into it.
Him and JJ Redick.
Him and JJ Redick. Okay, yeah.
And he was like, what do they have in common? And I think that was, I think that was unfair, especially when it comes to Nikola Jokic situation, because okay, he won the previous 2 MVPs previous to this season, but you could argue that his numbers and his play
are better.
His team success was better this season than it was in those previous 2 seasons. And he was deserving of them in those previous 2 seasons. Excuse me. So, I mean, I guess in some aspects, that did play a factor. And mind you, Kendrick Perkins has an MVP vote. He does have a vote as a media member. So I mean, I think all of those play a factor into why he's a little bit disrespected. And then last but not least, and I think Isaiah, as he said in this comment here, his game isn't for the casual basketball fan. You got to be a purist. He's not athletic. He don't have these freaky handles. He can't jump. He could probably barely jump over a phone book. You know what I'm saying? But he is extremely fundamentally sound. He's skilled. He has a very high basketball IQ. He's clever. He's crafty. He's all the things that the casual basketball fan may not love, but real basketball purists look at that and say, man, this dude can play some ball. And that's and it's that way with a lot of the foreign guys. Look at Luka Doncic. That man ain't athletic. Half the time he don't look like him and Jokic. Half the time they don't look like they in shape. Like they look like two guys. If you seen them walk into your local YMCA,
you wouldn't think anything of
it. You would think it's easy money until you look up and them dudes, and all of a sudden, for whatever reason, you can't stop these guys. Because they've mastered the fundamentals, and that's something that I think. And I've had this discussion before, and I think it's too far off topic, but I've had this discussion before. When we look at the NBA draft, you hear one or two words: potential and upside. Potential and upside. And these guys are getting drafted off of their athleticism and this, that, and the third, but they're no longer. Guys aren't mastering the fundamentals anymore, and that's just what it is.
Yeah, that's something I've been I've been struggling. I'm like, okay, man, I understand he's not the set. Well, first of all, let me go ahead and say this. I think I'm happy this year because the casual NBA fan, whatever the result is, they're going to be pissed off. You're going to get Jimmy Butler, who nobody wants to be good, but he just keeps beating all your favorite players and all these teams who are with superstars. And then you have Jokic, this unathletic, not marketable, very boring Serbian big man with an unorthodox game. And I guess you can say it. I think Gilbert Arenas talked about this, saying it's going to be a boring, if the Nuggets win, nobody's going to care. It's going to be like when the Spurs used to win in the early 2000s, everybody was bored with it. So either way,
they will deserve though. And if Jokic is able to finish it off and win this series and win this championship, like you got to put some respect on his name. He went through the gauntlet that was the Western Conference. He came out on top, and then it really kind of puts into perspective. These last two seasons, he's really been without his second best, and Michael Porter Jr. missed a lot of it. So he's really been for a vast majority. He had been without his second and third best players.
Boy, and I don't always climb on top of the Empire State Building and beat on my chest. But what have I been? Remember, we gave preseason when the NBA season started, and I threw out Denver, and I talked about that Golden State series and how they looked like they were this close, and they were very competitive with a Golden State team that went on to win the finals. And I said, man, if he gets a little bit of help, he'll be there.
And now, Jamal Murray's healthy at the right time. Michael Porter Jr. stay healthy. Aaron Gordon has been,
I like what
last year, but Aaron Gordon has been a great piece for him.
I like what KCP has done for them.
KCP was a phenomenal pickup for him. Yeah. And now here they are as the NBA Finals favorite, man. And so, and I know we both said we see a 6-game series. And yeah, that's I'm gonna go with Denver in 6 games. I think they're gonna go back and forth. I think they'll split the first 4 games. I think after 4 games it'll be a 2-2 series, and then I think Denver will win Game 5 at home, and then they'll go ahead and close it out in Game 6 in Miami. And I want to say this before we move on. I also want to say this, and I've said this a million times in our sports chat, and I'm gonna say it again here on our channel. Eric Spoelstra is one of the best coaches
Ever.
that we've seen in NBA history. I'm sorry. You can fight me. As you say, I'll die on that hill. Eric Spoelstra is a damn good head. He's a damn good head. Point blank, period. That's it. He's a damn good head coach. That's just it. This is his sixth finals appearance. Okay. The man, he has 2 rings. Look at these teams that he's taken to the. Look at this team. Look at this team. Like, bro, like, how are they in the finals? He's great at in-game adjustments. He's great at making his guys believe, getting his guys fired up. He's a great coach. If you and it's crazy, if you remember earlier in the season, him and Jimmy Butler was having words on the sideline. Like they was about to come to blows.
But
that's how crazy the season was for them.
But that's their relationship, though. That's what I've come to understand. That's their relationship. They're gonna duke it out. But the truth is they fight, they argue, they get ready to almost fight each other. Eric Spoelstra don't back down either, so it's not. Don't think
exactly.
Yeah, but one thing I love about them, and I talked about, I think maybe a few episodes, just the dynamic between the two.
Mm-hmm.
They trust and believe in each other.
They do. Jimmy believes in Eric Spoelstra and his coaching ability and his game plan. Mm-hmm. And Eric Spoelstra believes in Jimmy Butler as being that leader and that guy out on the floor.
Would anybody, and I think this is why you have to, sometimes everything happens for a reason, because I'm sure the 76ers are kicking themselves right now. Like, damn, we should have fucking kept Jimmy.
Minnesota too.
Minnesota as well. But it took for Eric Spoelstra to really give Jimmy the green light to be the guy. Whereas you saw other teams, they always wanted to find a way or manufacture a way to put somebody else ahead of him, make him more of a.
He was always kind of
pushed to the side. Exactly. But but Eric Spoelstra really let him run and show, and I think that's paid dividends. But damn,
as Jimmy always mentions with Philly, they chose Tobias Harris over him, and he never lets Philly forget that.
Well, is it really Tobias Harris or is it Ben Simmons? Because I heard the reason one of the main contributing factors to him leaving was Ben Simmons.
Either one is a little blasphemous. So,
and I know Joel Embiid is hurt because he wanted Jimmy Butler to stay.
Yeah, he did, man. But I mean, shout out to Jimmy, man. And
so last question, and then we'll move on to our next topic.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say Miami finds a way to win this series. Let's just look. We're in hypothetical mode, right? Okay. We didn't even see them get this far. So let's speak in hypotheticals here.
Right.
What is Jimmy Butler's legacy? Does that instantly make him a Hall of Famer?
Man. Ooh-wee.
He's a 6-time All-Star already.
Well, I'll put it like this. I'll say this. If he finds a way to win this title, like you said, he's a 6-time All-Star. We've seen guys get in, with, not as good resumes. We've seen, injuries got him, but we've seen a Grant Hill get in. If I'm not mistaken, and don't quote me on this, I think Chauncey Billups has gotten in.
I think,
and obviously Chauncey Billups had a great career. They didn't call him Mr. Big Shot for no reason, but if you add a championship to Jimmy Butler's resume, you'd have to take Jimmy Butler's resume over Chauncey Billups, So, yeah. I'd have to say, yeah. If he was to get a ring, you'd have to consider Jimmy Butler
to be.
You'd have to consider Jimmy Butler a Hall of Famer, and you'd have to put some respect on his name. I don't know. Some people may or may not consider him this already, but you probably have to consider him a top 10 player
Clutch wise.
in basketball. And I
Wait,
consider
wait.
him to be this. If he wins the championship, you got to consider him minimum a top 10 player in the NBA.
Oh, and come on, and right now.
Yes.
Okay.
If he gets a ring, in this series. And I already consider him this. He's one of the most elite playoff performers ever. Already. Whether he wins this series or not. He's one of the best playoff performers ever. So, I mean, it would do a lot for his legacy. It would solidify his Hall of Fame resume for sure.
So, we'll see. I see them fighting a good fight, but Jesus Christ, this Denver team, like I said, they just don't get rattled. And I'll say this, and then we'll move on.
Mm-hmm.
I think the scary thing going back to Denver, the scary thing about them is the Lakers were a great match. What probably matched up, I thought, very great with them.
With Denver? Yeah, I thought so too, but I think it just goes to show how good a team Denver is.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So if they could beat a team, that was probably the perfect matchup for them, then
And that's another thing. Like if Miami wins this series, so you've beaten the 1 and the 2 seed out the East, and then the number 1 seed out the West. Like, come on, man.
Yikes! Yeah,
right. That's a hell of a with 7 undrafted players. Come on, man.
Okay, so what does it say about Eric Spoelstra?
Just what I've said. I mean, he's one of the best coaches in NBA history. He is. He's a top 10, top 15 coach in NBA history.
But if he wins,
look.
But if he wins this championship, where is that?
That's 3.
If he wins this championship, this
will easily be his most impressive one.
But I'm saying you would have to say this one title is more impressive than a lot of coaches who you would rank over him.
Yeah,
you would have to say
this would be a very impressive title run. A very impressive title run. For sure. So we'll see what happens. Yeah. I mean, Denver's up 6 right now in the second quarter. Aaron Gordon and Michael Porter Jr. are, having themselves a great first half. So we'll see what happens.
We indeed will.
Yes, sir. But I wanted to switch it up just a little bit. I was saying we're gonna get into a little bit of football. In particular, I know we were gonna talk DeAndre Hopkins. And I don't know, was it a surprising move to you that they released him? So the Arizona Cardinals did release DeAndre Hopkins. Was it a surprising move to you?
No, and I think everybody kind of felt like this would happen. Especially you look at sports media or NFL media, a lot of people feel like this would happen because at his age, nobody was gonna pay Arizona anything. That's why Steve Keim, the ex GM for the Cardinals, basically said, man, like they need to lower that price, and just so they can say that they're going to get something back for him. He said, because if not, he said teams aren't going to pay you. Teams aren't going to give you a 2 or a 1, they might not even give you a 3. He's an older wide receiver. Granted, I still think DeAndre Hopkins,
he'll be 31 this season.
Exactly. He'll be 31, and he's battled some injuries the last 2 to 3 years. So
yeah, injuries. I think last year he was suspended the 6 games for the PED or something.
Exactly. And he came back and he played well, but I think it's just his age, injury history over the past 2 to 3 years. It doesn't look good. I still think he has some great football ahead of him. Granted, he goes in the right situation, but nobody was going to pay that. So they had to release him, and they had to eat. If I'm not mistaken, they had to eat a lot of that money. And, now he's free. So it was just kind of one of those. It was like an atomic bomb that blew up in their face.
I agree. So I know we wanted to talk possible or best destinations for D-Hop. First of all, I want to say this, and you alluded to it. So he was suspended, I believe, the 6 games last year for the PED
PD.
violation or whatnot. But the production was still there.
Yeah, it was.
You know,
He's still
and
productive.
and he only played 9 games last season, 9 of a possible 17. He still had 64 receptions for 717 yards and 3 TDs. So if we equate that out, you know, over a 17 game season, I mean,
He's having it's a 1,1400
13,
yard.
exactly. You know, right there near the top, you know, in yardage wise, as far as wide receivers, probably would have been close to, you know, 100 receptions, if not over. You know, typical what we expect from D Hop. You know,
Right.
a 5-time Pro Bowler, he's a 3-time All Pro. Like we said, he'll be 31. I think he'll turn 31 during the season. No, excuse me. He'll be 31 next week. Birthday's
Right.
next week. So he'll be 31 next week. But I think you and I both agree that he still may not to the level that we seen him in Houston. But I think we both agree that he still has some really good basketball left in him. Really good football left in him. I think we both agree that he still has 12, 13, 1,400 yard seasons left in him.
I'm
so
gonna be
real. Where would you well go ahead and then tell me where would you see as some really good possible destinations for him?
Okay. So before I say that, I said this in the chat and I got some pushback. I still think when healthy, and if hell, you don't even have to give him 17 games, give him 15 games. Mm-hmm. He's still going to give you top 5 wide receiver production. Like that's just who he is. Yeah. So when
man, I seen a stat. The man has like 4 drops total in the last like 4 or 5 seasons. He has like 4 drops total.
And I'm sure. Watch this. And I'm almost confident that a majority of those drops probably came in a short time span, just to show you how consistent he is. You know, over. You look at his body of work, but yeah, I still think he's still among the best of receivers. We've just seen other guys rise to the fray. That's why we're putting them up there. But as far as destinations, for him, I know he got interviewed and he said he wanted to go somewhere with a good GM. He's always had a dysfunctional front office.
Right.
And I'll go ahead and say this. He wants a quarterback that is actually committed to the game. And
I think that's one of his special abilities, that it's never mattered the quarterback for him. He's produced.
He has. He has. He's produced. And
I remember times in Houston where guys were injured and they had
janitors,
Sage Rosenfels out there, and he was getting 7 for $120 or something. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, he is one of those guys that he's one of, and you get a few receivers like this in the league that it doesn't matter who's throwing them the football, they're gonna find a way to be productive, and that's who DeAndre Hopkins is. And I guess, and I don't want to venture off and go on my own rant. I tell people I think it speaks volumes. He talks about the type of quarterbacks that he wants to play with. He wants to play with a drama-free quarterback that's truly committed to the game. And I don't think, as talented as he is, I just don't think Kyler Murray is that guy. I think Kyler Murray is more talent and not as much intangibles as you would like from a young quarterback. But he definitely wanted, and he wants to go to a team that's a contender. So when you look across the board, cap space wise, Philly is up there. The Philadelphia Eagles. I don't think that is it could happen, but I think for that to come to fruition, it's not that they wouldn't be able to afford them. But one thing we have to realize is, even though ideally we're looking at like, oh, they have all these weapons, guess what? These guys are good players and they have egos and they want the ball. And from my understanding, that was a issue last year. Where guys were kind of, I don't want to say it got ugly, but they definitely showed that they wanted the ball. AJ Brown wanted the ball. Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert wanted the ball. So you add DeAndre Hopkins into that equation, it just may not be, that's it. And here's the thing. You're not going to bring DeAndre. If DeAndre Hopkins goes there, he's going to be their 1B.
So you still consider AJ Brown the primary, he'd be number 1.
I would say that because he's in his physical prime. And
Okay,
he's
that,
not
that
only
makes
is he
sense.
great, yeah, not only is he great in his own right, but he's young and he's in his physical prime. But once again, 1A, 1B. That's just
And I
how.
mean, I think that that'll be scary to be able to even slide a guy like Devontae Smith into the slot. You know, that I mean
Right.
that would be if I don't think that's the destination for him, but
I mean, no,
hypothetically speaking,
hypothetically, but for that to happen, guys would have to really put their pride to the side to just for something like that to happen. So Philly's a possibility. My favorite when I look at different destinations, I think Buffalo is ideal for him. You go to Buffalo, you play across from Stephon Diggs,
mm-hmm.
who's going to attract a lot of attention. And guess what? Now you don't demand as much from Gabriel Davis. You can push him to the number 3 spot, and
Mm-hmm.
You let DeAndre Hopkins.
And Davis is a really great deep threat too. So
He is
out that slot position, he'd be a guy who can take the top off.
Exactly. So you wouldn't demand so much of him. His responsibility lacks, and once again you may see an uptick in big plays because he doesn't have that attention that a number 2 receiver would get. So Buffalo is ideal, and once again Josh Allen, top 3 quarterback and still in his prime, and we know how committed he is to getting over the hump in the AFC. So Buffalo is an ideal spot. I've heard New York as a floater. Here's the thing. Where he's at, I think he's going to have to make the decision. He's going to have to take a sacrifice somewhere. Either he's going to take a sacrifice pay-wise. From my understanding, he's looking for something like a Odell Beckham and up contract. So he wants 14, 15 million from my understanding. So it's not like he wants to take like a $8-9 million deal. So it's either he's going to have to sacrifice.
And I'll say this though, I don't think that's insane considering Odell got that deal missing all of last season and coming off of the second ACL surgery to the same knee.
Well, it's not. Here's the thing. It's not insane for the right situation. So when I say sacrifice for him, he's going to have to sacrifice either pay wise or competition wise. You can go to a Giants team and probably get the money that you want, but are you really going to have an opportunity to go and make a deep playoff run? Who knows, right? That's a question mark.
So let's enter. I got a couple other teams that I thought about, but before I get to those teams, let's entertain that idea. Okay, in the NFC, right? And you can argue NFC East probably arguably the I think
best division in football.
NFC and AFC both have an argument as best divisions in football. Hypothetically, let's say you put them on a team on that Giants team. You got D-Hop. They signed they got Darren Waller this offseason. You still got Saquon Barkley in the backfield. You still got a Darius Slayton who I like. What do you, if let's say he was to go there, could you see them, would that move the Giants up your list as far as NFC teams and possible Super Bowl contenders?
Well, here's the thing. It would make them better. I think it would make them 1 to 2 wins better, but I'm not confident enough in the Giants, even though I think that they have a really strong foundation on both sides of the football. I don't know if they have enough pure firepower on either side to, when it comes down to the nitty gritty, to beat a Philly in the playoffs. I think Detroit's going to be very good. To beat a Seattle, to beat a San Fran, that's what I think. That's where the struggle is. It's not that they're not going to be a better football team; they're going to be better. But is D-Hop alone with once again, we don't know what Daniel Jones is going to look like if he's going to continue his upward trajectory. Is that going to be enough to get you over the hump against some of the better? And here's the thing: we keep downplaying the NFC like the NFC isn't. We just don't have as much. We've lost the historical key figures who spent their entire careers or most of their careers in the NFC. That's why we talk down on the NFC, but it's still very competitive. And you have teams that if you look at them top to bottom roster wise, like a Seattle, like a Detroit, it can get pretty scary. So that's the only question mark I have for him going to New York. He'll probably get the money that he wants, but are you really going to have an opportunity? One, you're going to play in the most competitive division in football, arguable if you want to say AFC East or maybe NFC North, which I think is going to be pretty competitive this year. That's really that you're going to play in a very competitive division with a quarterback who is the third best quarterback in that division.
Okay. True.
Even though I would love as a football fan, I'd love it. I very much so enjoy it because I would love to see what Brian Daboll. If you thought Brian Daboll was acting a fool with Stephon Diggs, I can only imagine what he's going to do with DeAndre Hopkins. So,
and I think that's my thing. I have so much confidence, and I think so highly of Brian Daboll that,
of course,
I think to get a true bona fide number one receiver in there, that would, and then you got that weapon in Darren Waller there. I think it would just open so much up. I guess my only thing is, in my eyes, I kind of consider them, and maybe that was because of the weapons that they had there. I kind of considered them more of a run first team, a run the ball and defend type of team. And so when you get two really elite weapons like Darren Waller and DeAndre Hopkins, you gotta kind of manipulate your scheme to get the ball in those guys' hands and let them do what they do. So I guess that'll probably be my only concern there. But I would like to fit there. I had two other teams.
Go ahead. Shoot.
So one team, obviously, and it's been mentioned, Kansas City. You go there, obviously Patrick Mahomes. Enough said. You know what I'm saying? He'd go there, be the number one option. He'd have Valdez-Scantling, Kadarius Toney in the slot. They still got Sky Moore. You still got Travis Kelce. I mean that would just be insane for them. You know what I'm saying? Almost coming off the Super Bowl, almost the rich getting richer, right? Also, I'm gonna throw another team out there that I've heard one or two people mention, but I think this would be a really scary fit. The Detroit Lions. He goes to Detroit. Amon-Ra St. Brown is continuing to ascend, but I think not that he's not a number one, but I think he would seamlessly fit as a number two. I think his numbers, he may even have better numbers because DeAndre Hopkins is there. They get Jameson Williams back this season. They still got veteran Marvin Jones Jr. I mean, I really feel like, and Jared Goff, quiet as it's kept, he had a hell of a season last year. You can say what you want about him. You and I always talk about him. He's the type of guy that when he gets in the groove, there's not a throw that he can't make.
And he can play with the best quarterbacks in the league when he's hot. He's just streaky.
We've seen him do that. Let's not forget that.
Monday night
game a couple years ago against Kansas City.
One of the greatest offensive games ever.
He was going blow for blow with Patrick Mahomes, blow for blow. So I mean that was the other team I thought about. Like I really feel like he could be a really solid fit in Detroit.
And I like that because once again, you have Jameson Williams, who still really hasn't made a impact at the NFL level, injury and things of that nature. Now he's suspended, but that is, I think, a smart maybe 1 to 2 year stopgap option. He's going to go to I think an ascending franchise with a good front office, a very hands-on, ambitious head coach in Dan Campbell, and you get Jared Goff, who Jared Goff doesn't have a big ego. He's just about coming in, and I think that he's really went in and embraced that blue collar mindset coming to Detroit, and it's paid dividends for him. So you're right, that actually would be that's a fit I actually never really thought about. So I just love
the direction that they're going in. As I think. I was listening to you, and then actually in our Rooted in Sports community, which, by the way, this Saturday, 12 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 2 p.m. Central Standard Time on Twitter Spaces. Our boy Isaiah was in there, and me and him were actually talking. This wasn't last Saturday, Saturday before last. Me and him were actually talking, and if you remember, during our draft special, he and I both were really critical of the Jahmyr Gibbs pick. But
Wow.
speaking of Detroit, and he kind of came around to the pick, and we was talking, Saturday before last, and he was really kind of brought me in, on the pick. And so considering they got Jahmyr Gibbs, they signed my boy David Montgomery. I think that's going to be a great 1-2 punch. I think it's going to be very similar to DeAndre Swift and Jamal Williams. And then, quiet as it's kept, they had one of the best offensive lines in the game.
They did. They absolutely did.
With Penei Sewell and Frank Ragnow,
Taylor Decker.
They got one of the best offensive lines in the game. So this team is really well put together. They're heading in the right direction. They're my pick to win the NFC North. I know you were talking about them as far as about the NFC North as far as being a competitive division. They are my pick to win North.
But yeah, no, I agree with you.
Oh, sorry, AFC North. Excuse me.
Yeah,
but Detroit is my pick to win the NFC North. And I mean, if they're able to add a DeAndre Hopkins, I think that'll be just phenomenal for them.
You're right, and there are some options out there. And you're right. I think Detroit is probably you could say the most ideal fit because they aren't paying. Well, yeah, they're not really paying a lot of guys. They have a lot of younger guys, so they don't have a lot of second contract guys on that roster. Mm-hmm. So you're right. It could be a very seamless fit. But the biggest thing is
some young up and coming pieces defensively.
Oh, of course.
We seen Aiden Hutchinson ended the season last year. I know you love the Jack Campbell pick. Romeo Okwara. I mean, they Alex Anzalone at linebacker. Mm-hmm. I mean, they got some guys there.
They're a very, on paper. Granted, we have to see how it's going to transition on the field, but on paper, they're a very complete team. Like they really don't have many holes, Yeah. So you're right. I think that could be ideal for them if they're able to come to. And plus, you don't know if Detroit is in the market for them. If they are interested in bringing him in, they may feel like they have guys on their roster or they like their roster as is. You never know. But that's an option. One I heard thrown around, but I don't think this will happen based on off of the history and the relationship. Is a lot. I've heard people at times talk about New England, but with Bill O'Brien, I just don't know if he would want to travel down that road again.
Yeah.
So, but
we know the relationship that they had.
We know the relationship.
Bill O'Brien basically let him go for David Johnson. And we see how that
David Johnson. It turned out pretty ugly and pretty bad, and got Bill O'Brien, a good head coach, got his ass fired.
Exactly.
But I mean, let's say he goes to New England, who I've already looked at their receiving core.
Because of that Bill O'Brien, I don't see that happening. But hypothetically, I mean,
let's say if it happened, it would be something that you have to respect because he knows how to use DeAndre Hopkins. And once again, they really do have some solid weapons. This isn't them a year ago or 2 years ago with Cam.
Speaking of New England?
In New England, yeah. They actually
they still got Devontae Parker, correct?
They still got Devontae Parker.
I love Hunter Henry.
They signed they signed Mike Gesicki.
Oh, so you got Henry and Gesicki.
They signed Juju.
They got Juju. I know they lost. I can't think of his name to the Raiders.
Well, they didn't resign him.
Right. I can't think of his name right now.
Kendrick Bourne.
Was it Bourne? Was it Bourne? No.
It was I feel like it's like 2 or 3 guys that all
the guy that lost to the Raiders. I think he was their leading receiver last year. I can't think of his name, but either way, I mean, it would be a great fit there. But because Bill O'Brien is there, I just.
Well, we don't know, and plus they say nobody wants to. New England's not fun. Yeah, I think New England. You go to New England to win. You don't go there to have fun or to enjoy life.
Right.
So he would have to feel like the juice is worth the squeeze, and he's more likely than not would not get anywhere near the contract that he wants because they don't overpay people or they're very strict in how they do business. So you just never know. But I mean, once again,
Jacoby Myers. That's how
Jacoby Myers. Said Kendrick Bourne. But yeah, so there are definitely some options for him. It's gonna be what he wants. He's kind of like like that Carmelo decision. Am I going to choose the bag or am I going to choose the opportunity to go win a championship?
That's a good comparison.
Yeah, so it's up to him, but whatever happens, I mean, he's kind of already established himself, already has had a Hall of Fame worthy career. Now from here is just choosing what is the priority at this point. So yeah, we'll stand by and see how that works out. But I like that Detroit one. I ain't gonna lie. Now you got me my wheels turned. I'm like, if they can get a DeAndre Hopkins,
man, watch out. Mm-hmm. And best of luck to DeAndre though. Let's keep an eye out on that. Really interested to see where he ends up. Last but not least, and we don't got to spend a lot of time on this, but this Jimmy Garoppolo situation. So obviously, speaking of Las Vegas Raiders, he signed with the Las Vegas Raiders this season. He had kind of a foot injury last year, and apparently, he hasn't passed his physical yet with the Las Vegas Raiders, and so there stands a chance where the deal could possibly be voided if he doesn't do so. And I've heard. Look, I've seen a couple media clippings and a couple, stories. I've heard stories that were so crazy as to say he might not even play this season.
If so,
and that might be that's crazy. That's just absurd to think about. But what do you make of this situation? And then considering, Las Vegas Raiders, okay, they moved off of David Carr. They signed, Jimmy Garoppolo, who I guess they thought would be their quarterback moving forward. Obviously you got Josh McDaniels as the head coach. They're in another division that's fairly tough, that had two playoff teams last year, in the Chiefs, the Super Bowl champions, and the LA Chargers. Both teams you would have to think would be, just as competitive as they were, if not better than last year. You got a team in Denver who went out and hired Super Bowl winning coach in Sean Payton, who everybody believes is going to kind of turn that thing around. And I believe so as well. I don't know if we'll see the Russell Wilson that we've seen in the past, but I do believe that we'll see him kind of turn things around and get that team headed in the right direction. So now all of a sudden, I mean, a lot of people may have arguably had this Las Vegas Raiders team finishing last in that division anyway. So now, with these latest developments, what do you think of this situation and where it kind of puts the Las Vegas Raiders right now?
Well, it's ugly because honestly, when they signed Jimmy, I thought, I felt like it was a sigh of relief because you get somebody who is familiar with Josh McDaniels' system and who is just steady. Great locker room.
That's exactly the word that comes to mind when I think of him.
Steady. Great locker room presence. You can trust him, right? He's not just this super transcendent quarterback, but he is steady. He protects the football very well. Guys love him in the locker room, and he has moments where he gets hot and he can have him a game. He can have him a 250-yard game with 3 or 4 touchdowns. So he's very capable of performing at a high level. But now, you put yourself in a situation where if you feel like you want to avoid this contract, I think here's the realism of where the National Football League is right now, and some of these teams who are kind of like in a quarterback conundrum.
Okay.
If you're not sold, or if you don't feel like you're competitive or you can seriously be competitive, you don't have to overspend or overpay for a quarterback. And I think for the Raiders, especially if you look at Josh McDaniels, maybe he has a pretty solid leash. So don't be surprised if you see him get another 2, maybe even 3 years to get this team together. But if Jimmy doesn't pass that physical, I totally, and I hate to use the word tanking, but void that man's contract. So now I'm not paying him all this extra money and he's not counting against the cap. And we go ahead and we rock out with Brian Hoyer, who we know knows Josh McDaniels' system like the back of his hand. And look, either way it goes, whatever happens, we're going to be picking at the top of next draft. Maybe not number 1, but we're going to get an opportunity to pick one of the top 3 to 4
quarterback heavy draft.
And a quarterback heavy draft. And that's where that's the logic that I think a lot of teams have right now. It's like, why would we go crazy? Why would we give up a whole bunch for Trey Lance? For what? When there are quarterbacks next year. So it's just there's no logic.
And Trey Lance is still, unfortunately, he's still very unproven.
He is. And from my understanding, he hasn't looked even. I mean, granted, it's OTAs, but he hasn't looked very good. Sam Darnold is outplaying him. You know, so
I actually, it's crazy you said that. I was reading earlier. I read something that said that, and to the fact that one NFL exec said, you know, Sam Darnold has been performing so well that he's kind of one NFL exec said Sam Darnold has performed so well in OTAs that it's made him reinvigorate confidence in him, which is crazy.
Look, I said this on the chat. He's the most talented quarterback on that roster. If we talk about top to bottom, Sam Darnold, he's the most talented quarterback on that roster from top to bottom. He's bigger than the other two. He has maybe not strong or throw as far, but he has just as great of an arm as any of the other two. He can make all the throws. He is pretty accurate. He is mobile, right? It's not like Sam Darnold's not a statue. He will get out there and run. Mm-hmm. He is everything you want in the prototypical you want from the modern prototypical quarterback. The only thing from him, the only argument you can make against him is that he's damaged goods. If he can overcome that and he can really clean things up, which I think that system is going to benefit him so much because it's a quarterback-friendly system. It's a quarterback-friendly system. You run the football a lot. It's very simplistic reads. So if you thought we saw what Brock Purdy did in that system, like Sam Darnold was playing some good football the back end of last year with Carolina when they were running the football with Chubba Hubbard and was it Devontae Foreman? Like he was playing really, really, really good football when he had that running game to lean on. So, you know, I would tell everybody. I know not big or not high on Sam Darnold, but it wouldn't surprise me if he played so well that they're like, hey, look, Brock, you can take your time coming back because
anybody could come up with a scheme, especially a run scheme to help Sam Darnold and kind of get the Niners along until a Brock Purdy can come back or whatnot. It's Kyle Shanahan.
I just think and once again, I think if he gets his confidence, and this is nothing against Brock Purdy because I like Brock Purdy.
Mm-hmm.
If Sam Darnold gets confidence, which I think that he's been building over this last 12 months, he raises their ceiling to a place that Brock Purdy never could. Brock Purdy, even though we like Brock Purdy, right? Brock Purdy has a very solid arm. He was a 4-year starter at Iowa State. There's a reason why he came in and performed the way that he did. But if we put them side to side, we talk about physical attributes. It's not really. I don't think it's a comparison. Sam Darnold's a bigger, more talented, and every bit probably more mobile of a quarterback. So if he can get confidence, that's the hard part. If we could see an Alex Smith type of reinvention, career reinvigorate. Mm-hmm. People forget Alex Smith was all but a bust. He was damaged goods for 7 years. Right, he wasn't good in the National Football League. Jim Harbaugh gets there. He patting them on the pads before every single game. Next thing you know, Alex Smith's a Pro Bowler.
Yep, and then he gets to Kansas City and under Andy Reid and
makes 1 or 2 more. Yeah, you know what I'm saying. So so that's just something to keep an eye on. But as far as going back to Jimmy Garoppolo, the Raiders, that's not. I think it sucks because they wanted to see what they could have did with him. But if it doesn't work out, why would we stress ourselves out and pay extra money to a player that is not our quarterback of the future?
Yep. I think you trot Brian Hoyer out there, like you said. You go through this season, and now this is my only concern with that.
Say it. I know you're gonna say it.
We've been hearing Davante Adams talk, a lot, in a negative manner, about kind of the organization. And I think, and you know what, crazy enough, I'm gonna give a shout out to Josh McDaniels for he publicly supported the things that Davante Adams had to say.
Because he knows
you got to in this situation.
Because he knows it's justified. And here's the thing: I know that there were conversations prior to that trade happening that Josh McDaniels sold him on what they were building. So you guys sold, and then maybe it wasn't even just Josh McDaniels, maybe it was just that organization as a whole. But y'all sold this man who is still, contrary to popular belief, is still the number one receiver in the National Football League.
Absolutely.
Right?
If you want to say Jefferson or Chase is 1A or whatever, but I agree. To me, Davante Adams is still the best receiver in the league.
He's still the best in the game. But you sold this man to leave. And here's the crazy part. Davante had said this. Green Bay was going to pay him. Green Bay was willing to match and pay him what he wanted. That's a fact. Davante came out and said that. He said, I wanted to come home and be with my family. But you sold him on coming back to the West Coast, on playing with his best friend.
Playing with his boy.
Right? Or playing with his friend. And then you get him up out of there. And now you're starting to get rid of valuable pieces on this team. You got rid of Darren Waller.
Who I guess by reports, him and Josh McDaniels just did not see eye to eye for whatever reason.
And I could tell because after a while, Darren Waller, you could tell, even though Darren Waller has been injury prone, it kind of felt like he just didn't want to play. Like that's the gist I got from it. Cause I'm like, this man can't be and trust me, I had him in fantasy. I'm like, why the fuck is this man not playing? But so, you get little things like that. So for Darren Waller, I'll say this, if they do go into like a quasi tanking, quasi rebuild type thing, you might need to explore trading that man. You might need to explore something because he's not going to be happy.
And that's my thing with next season. Lord forbid this Jimmy Garoppolo situation doesn't work out, and they have to find another option. Let's say they're going with Brian Hoyer. And correct, did Brian Hoyer? I could be wrong. Did he play with D-Hop a little bit in Houston?
He might have. I think they did play a little bit together.
So at least there is a little bit of a rapport there.
Oh, you talking about D-Hop or Devontae? Because this is Devontae. Are you talking about if D-Hop goes to?
Sorry, excuse me.
It's easy to get them. It's easy to get them mixed up. Two.
Sorry.
Very technical guys with dreads, but no, I get what you're saying.
Forgive me. Okay, but either way, I mean, I think that you do stand the chance of kind of losing Davante. If this Jimmy Garoppolo situation doesn't work out, now you got to resort over to Brian Hoyer. We're talking about a great wide receiver who already seems to be a little uneasy about the state of the franchise anyway. So now, let's say, okay, this Jimmy Garoppolo situation doesn't work out. You got Brian Hoyer in there. Now you're almost, I'm not going to say tanking, but it kind of.
You're tanking.
You're not tanking, but you're tanking.
Hey, look, you're doing what? Go ahead.
Then hold on, but then okay, now you're tanking, right? You go get in the draft. You're playing, to get one of these quarterbacks who may actually pan out, but even yet and still, even if this quarterback pans out, you still looking at maybe a year or two before you're competitive again. And for a guy in Davante Adams, God dog, and Davante Adams, who's not all that young anymore. No, it's like, man, do I want to stick around through this?
And they, once again, that's something that they're going to have to really put thought to. Hopefully, if they do go into that, hopefully they do the right thing by that man and they trade him. And the thing is the difference between him and who you mentioned, DeAndre Hopkins, is that he's not only been healthy, but he has consistently been the bar none best receiver in football over the past 3 years. People forget, even when Cooper Kupp won the I know there's an argument that people hate. Even when Cooper Kupp won the Triple Crown, Davante Adams was still Davante Adams was still this is crazy. Cooper Kupp Triple Crown. Watch this. NFL experts looked at that and said, "That's nice." Davante Adams is the number one receiver in the NFL. He was still rated the number one receiver in the NFL, even in Cooper Kupp's Triple Crown year.
And speaking of their age, we were talking about DeAndre Hopkins will be 31 next week. Davante Adams will be 31 in December.
I think they both came in DeAndre Hopkins came in 2013. And then so they're a year.
Davante was 2014.
Yeah, he was 2014. So
yeah, Davante was 2014. So I want to ask this, and then we can get up out of here.
Go ahead.
And I agree, but speaking of Cooper Kupp, right? Why do you think? Because even when you ask other players, other wide receivers, no one says that Cooper and seeing what Cooper Kupp did with the Triple Crown, and even last season and before he got hurt, because he was on yet another, record-breaking path before he got hurt.
Right.
Why do you think so many analysts, people, even other wide receivers, because I've heard numerous wide receivers say this, why do you think that so many people still don't consider Cooper Kupp not only as the best receiver in football, but I've heard even other receivers, a lot of people don't even have him as a top 5 receiver in football. Why do you think that's the case?
Well, it's because first of all, for anyone that's watching, this isn't I try not to make this a thing about race, but I think that especially the year he was having so much success, he was, in the grand scheme of things, the great white hope.
No, that's fair.
Fair. And I think that's what
Adam Thielen, who I've always been a fan of Adam Thielen.
But here's the funny part. Adam Thielen, I always knew Stephon Diggs was better. And I've had people tell me I didn't know anything about football because I told them Stephon Diggs is a better player. Right. Mm-hmm. But now we've seen that come to fruition. Now, here's the thing about Cooper Kupp. I like Cooper Kupp coming out of college. He was a dog in college. And when he came into the NFL, he was a very natural fit as a slot for the Rams with Brandon Cooks and Robert Woods operating on the outside. Here's the issue. When you look at that Triple Crown season, or even if you see what Sean McVay was doing with him last year, all Sean McVay does, and this speaks to Sean McVay's genius, he took a guy who I think in Cooper Kupp is a top 10 Pro Bowl receiver, and he schemes so well that he creates mismatches and gives them free releases, and it just raises his ceiling, and it makes it look like he's more of a dominant receiver than he actually is. Now, here's the thing. Of course, the confidence kicks in, and he's always been great after the catch. He's a great receiver after the catch, and he is a pretty respectable dynamic route runner. But I tell people, if you put Davante Adams, or you put Jamar Chase in that system, or you put Justin Jefferson, we saw what Justin Jefferson did in that system, right? Because they got the offensive coordinator O'Connor. Yeah, O'Connor's the head coach for Minnesota. They're better players. They're more naturally talented. You couldn't ask Cooper Kupp to be an ex receiver and go against Sauce Gardner and have the same production. I'm not going to say he wouldn't be productive. I think he's still I think naturally, without Sean McVay, Cooper Kupp is a 11 to 1,300 yard guy that can get
not a Triple Crown guy.
No, he's not. He's not that. And I think that everybody, and here's the thing, I've said it, and once again, people tell me I don't know what I'm talking about. But then when you see the actual people in the league say, I don't really see it like that. Like, I think I respect his game. Even Darius Slay, he was on a podcast last year, and I think it was the year before that, and they brought his name up. And he said, well, I like him, but I'll never see him like that because he's a slot guy. And that's what you see him. When you watch, I dare and I challenge anybody, and this is not to disrespect Cooper Kupp because he's really good, but watch his highlights from that 2021 Triple Crown season. You're going to see a fucking shitload of free releases, screens, rub routes. You're going to see so much stuff that you're, and this is what always scares me. I know I'm going off on a tangent.
No, it's good.
When you see Cooper Kupp, when you see, and this is when we talk about number one wide receivers, when you see Cooper Kupp in one-on-one coverage against a fucking linebacker, that shows you its scheme. Because no defensive coordinator in their right fucking mind is gonna let a dominant wide receiver be matched up on a linebacker or a safety. And look at when people really watch his highlights, you're gonna be like, how the fuck is he this open? And it's not a disrespect to him, but you're asking like, damn. So to me, it's more of a match made in heaven. And Sean McVay has really learned how to use him as a chess piece and found ways to spring him open. It's almost like that offense is built around him at this point. It's built around what Cooper Kupp does well. That's why you see people, and I think teams started to learn it last year. They're like, if you're going to beat us, you're not going to beat us with Cooper Kupp. So, I mean, we can let him do whatever he do, get his little yards, but that's not going to beat us. Cooper Kupp had a great game against Dallas, and they lost convincingly, right?
Yep.
So that's where I think it comes from. I tell people who if we look at the top receivers in the league, it comes to a point to where we have to be fair to the player. You're going to compare him to Davante Adams, who rated higher than him during your best year, during a historical year. This guy still was rated better than you. So you want to compare him to Davante Adams? That's not fair to Cooper Kupp. You want to compare him to them LSU boys, Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson?
And Justin Jefferson.
Who look like superheroes on some days? Right? You want to compare him to Stephon Diggs, who I think sometimes we forget how good he really is. You want to compare him to Tyreek Hill?
Who and not to shit on him in Kansas City, but I think for Tyreek Hill,
he needed
at every year you see improvement as far as his route running and his true wide receiver skills. Like he's no longer just a deep
speedster.
We know what he can do with his speed, but every year you see improvement as far as his pure wide receiver skills.
He's really worked on his craft, and you can tell.
Yes. Right.
But we look at other names. You want to put him over AJ Brown? AJ Brown's a dog. I've been saying this for you. Look, factor this in. DK Metcalf right now, who I think is starting to really play his best football and is a bona fide Pro Bowler. Mm-hmm. And that, I always say at Ole Miss, DK Metcalf didn't start. AJ Brown was their guy, was the number one guy over him. Right. So that just shows you how good AJ Brown is. And he just had his best season in Philly. First team All Pro. And it's another guy that I throw in there right outside at number 6 or number 7. And you may fight me on this. I think Terry McLaurin is better than him. And that's because I've seen Terry. Hey, look, I'm
not arguing as far as the skill level. I think injuries and consistency may be the thing, but I'm not arguing as far as the skill level.
Well, here's the thing. If we want, can we really say consistency? Because Terry McLaurin is essentially doing right now in Washington what we've seen DeAndre Hopkins do in Houston some of his early years, putting up big numbers, putting up Pro Bowl numbers with janitors at quarterback.
Yeah, I can't argue with that.
So that's why people look at Scary Terry and they like, how the fuck is this man doing this with Taylor Heineke or freaking, a low-level Carson Wentz, So, yeah, but I can go on a tangent about that all day. I would love and respect Cooper Kupp as a player, but to me, he is top 10 at best. It would be so unfair to him to compare him to those guys because they're just better.
And there you have it, man. I just had to ask that though, because I hear that a lot when it comes to Cooper Kupp, and even with a lot of times I take stock and I take value into what wide receivers have to say about their other constituents and guys that they're being compared to. And like I said, when I hear these wide receivers on a lot of their list, I just rarely hear Cooper Kupp's name, and no disrespect to him, but I was just wondering what your take was on that, man. But yet another successful show. As always, we appreciate everybody that has tuned in, and that will tune in. Go ahead and like and subscribe to us on YouTube, simply at Rooted in Sports. Go ahead and follow the Instagram page. Once again, that's simply at Rooted in Sports. Old King Tiberius has the Sports Exclusive podcast. Go ahead and follow that, like and subscribe to that on YouTube. Follow that on Instagram. Just dropped a new episode yesterday. What was yesterday's episode?
Embracing parody in sports.
Embracing parody in sports. So definitely go check that out. Give us each an individual follow. My Instagram handle is iswan_0623. And then you got King Tiberius at Tiberius, just how you see it spelled, scrolling across the bottom of the screen. Tiberius 519 on Instagram as well. We got Rooted in, like I mentioned earlier, we got our Rooted in Sports community over Twitter Spaces, and that's going to be this Saturday. That's 12 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 2 p.m. Central Standard Time. And once again, it's going to be over Twitter Spaces. Obviously, you can, give us a follow on Twitter as well, at Rooted in Sports. And I think that's it. Did I get everything?
You hit everything on the head, man. You hit everything on the head. So
awesome. We'll be right back here next Thursday. Same bat time, same bat place, same bat channel.
Mm-hmm.
Much love to everybody. God bless everybody.
And enjoy the NBA Finals.
Enjoy the NBA Finals, in which Denver is beating the snot out of Miami right now in the third quarter. So there's that. But check out these finals, and we'll be right back next week. So till next week, much love. God bless. We'll catch y'all next time.
See you next time.